Good morning, and thank you all for joining us for the 2022 All Partner Meeting. It's an absolute pleasure to be in community with you all this morning, and I'm really looking forward to our time together today. My name is Courtney Cintron, Ingenuity's Director of Partnerships and Learning, and I'm here to get us feeling energized and informed about what's to come during your time with us today. So before we get started, we'd like to provide you with a few important notes. First, to enable closed captions for yourself today, please find the CC symbol located at the bottom of your screen, and that should provide you with a couple of options to either view and download a transcription or use live captions. You'll also receive the slides and a recording of this presentation via email in about 1 to 2 weeks following this meeting. And we'll also be launching a couple of polls throughout the morning, which will be automatically available to you on your screen and hopefully provide some opportunities for us to connect and engage with one another. And finally, following the event, we'll provide you with an exit survey. Your feedback is always valued, and it's essential in helping us make continued improvements to these events and as a way to stay in dialogue around what's important to you. Before we move on, we'd like to acknowledge that this virtual meeting is taking place on the stolen land of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa nations. Because of the Great Lakes, the land naturally became a site of travel, of healing, trade, and gathering for many Native tribes, and it's still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois that still practice their traditions and care for the land. So as we begin today's program, let's honor these ancestral grounds that we're on and support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown worldwide, and begin to rethink our own relationship with the land and its original peoples. Okay, so now it's time to get to know you all a little bit better and give you a sense of who's joining us today through our Who's in the Room poll, which was just launched. So we have a few questions for you here, and I'll kind of walk you through them to give you a sense. So have you joined us for an all-partner meeting in the past? This is single choice, yes or no. Also, how many years have you been rocking it out in the field of arts education? 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10, 11 to 15 years, or 15 plus years? Also, what best describes your current role or roles? Program manager, director, administrative manager, director, marketing manager, director, executive creative director, teaching artist or arts educator, funder, board member. What's your primary arts discipline? This could be for you as an individual or your arts organization. Visual arts, media arts, music, dance movement, theater or literary arts, multidisciplinary, or a non-arts organization. And also, what are you most looking forward to learning about today? How we're working on making improvements for arts partners working with CPS, new artlook partnership features, the Creative Schools Fund, new data snapshots, or how we can work together to make an even greater impact in arts education. So it looks like we have about almost 80% participation now. So we'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll end the poll. Numbers are still going up, so we'll give you a little bit more time here. Okay. So it looks like, have you joined us for an all-partner meeting in the past? 66% of folks today have joined us for an all-partner meeting in the past. That's a lot. How many years have you been in the field of arts education? We have a pretty good distribution across numbers here, but actually a lot of folks, about 39%, 15 plus years. Wow, that's commitment. What best describes your current roles? We have a lot of program manager and directors, administrative managers and directors, executive and creative directors, teaching artists and educators, and some funders and board members. And what is your primary arts discipline? So we have, once again, pretty even distribution across. Music, I think, is showing out here with 30%. Okay, music folks, I'm a music person too. Wonderful, wonderful. And finally, what are you looking forward to learning about today? And it seems like 47% here would like to know how we're working on making improvements for arts partners working with CPS. If you are interested in new artlook partnership features, the Creative Schools Fund, if you are maybe curious about the data snapshots. And finally, we have a lot of people, 34%, curious about how we can work together to make an even greater impact in arts education. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the results now. Okay, so it looks like we have a really great balance of arts partners and funders and board members in the room today. Thank you all again for being present with us and sharing a little bit about yourselves. So now that we know who's in the room, let me tell you about what you can expect during our time together today. First, you'll have an opportunity to meet the Ingenuity team and to put some faces to names. Then through presentations by Ingenuity's Executive Director, Nicole Upton, and Ingenuity's Director of Data and Research, Steve Schufelt, and myself, we'll provide you with some important context and information about the current arts education landscape, Ingenuity's work, as well as our shared work, and some key initiatives that are currently underway. We'll also take a short break, and when we return, you'll have an opportunity to hear from Chicago Public Schools CEO, Pedro Martinez. And following the keynote, you'll hear from various Ingenuity team members on how we're using data to better serve arts partners and the sector at large. And then we'll close out with Artlook Converge, which is a new call to action around how we can all come together to make an impact through data. Okay, so now that you know what topics we'll be covering, let's talk about the team behind this work. We are small, but we do pack a punch. So I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate each team member and individual. I'll start with our data team. Data is the backbone and driver of strategy for Ingenuity's work as an organization and in service of all that you do. You'll be hearing a lot about that today, but for now, I'll introduce you to Steve Schufelt, Angela Lynn, and Patrick Payne. The Partnerships and Learning team. Ariel Frost and myself work to design responsive learning and partnership programs that build program capacity and connections between schools and arts organizations. And where would we be without our communications team, comprised of Jackie Rogers and new to Ingenuity, Usman Khan. They keep us in the arts education loop with timely messages, updates, alerts for action, helping us stay united and aligned as a community. And the Creative School Fund team, Ola Folletti and Eli Cole. Many of you who have worked with schools to apply for the fund in the past are likely familiar with this team that work hard to address immediate arts needs in schools and strengthen partnerships. And last but not least, our development and operations team who make our work possible and keep us moving. Tashia Fauch, Brianna Hernandez, and also new to our team, Raquel Bautista Holton. You'll be hearing from many of our team members throughout this morning's presentation, so stay tuned. I'd also like to extend a sincere thank you to our board of directors for their thought leadership and contributions to the work that we do in service of arts education, access, and equity. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that we've learned a little bit about you and you've learned a little bit about us, it's time to get into the heart of the conversation today. I am thrilled and honored to introduce you to Ingenuity's visionary leader, Nicole Upton.
Thank you, Courtney. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing out there? I hate that I can't see your faces, but I'm looking at all of your names and all of the attendees that are with us here today and just want to extend my sincere welcome and thank you for taking some time out of your very busy day to be here with us today. It had been a pretty typical Thursday afternoon up until that point. And then I got the call. Ring, ring. Nicole? Yes. Nicole, I am thrilled to let you know that the Ingenuity Board of Directors has voted to name you Ingenuity's next executive director. Congratulations. Holy camole. The rest of the conversation was a bit of a blur, I have to admit. But let's step back a little bit first. Over the last several years, Ingenuity has, as you know, become recognized as leaders in harnessing a lot of our data work and insights for social good. And we've developed partnerships all across the country as a result of that work. Last year, our board, along with our incredible executive director, Paul Schneeweiss, decided to explore and begin exploring the possibilities and the potential behind that piece of our work a little bit more seriously. At that time, I transitioned out of my role of Director of Partnerships and Learning that I had served in since 2015, and I became Ingenuity's first Managing Director to ensure that our core team was squarely focused on our mission of arts education equity in Chicago Public Schools. I spent the better part of last year learning how to be a managing director and really trying to navigate all the complexities of the work and of the world alongside of our staff team. There was a lot to figure out. So when the Ingenuity Board made the decision to launch Parliament, a new public benefit corporation to house our data and insights work, it was really exciting. It felt like a very natural evolution and the clear next step, and one that, quite frankly, most of us on the staff had kind of been anticipating for a while. It's a really cool and unique model. Parliament is a subsidiary of Ingenuity and will serve as both a technology and consulting partner for funders and social entrepreneurs and nonprofit advocates and leaders all across the country. Ingenuity's founding executive director, Paul Schneeweiss, has now assumed the role of CEO at the new company at Parliament and is overseeing its launch. There's no question that Paul's work has helped to influence some of the greatest growth that we've seen in Chicago arts education in the last 30 years. We're so grateful for everything he's done for Ingenuity, and I personally am very grateful that I've had the opportunity to work alongside him, to learn from him, and now to really be able to call him a friend, which I will continue to do. And trust me, he is still on my speed dial. And there have been many times that I've already said, hey, what about this thing, Paul? So he's only a phone call away. And we extend our gratitude towards him and all of the best of luck as Parliament launches. But let's get back to Ingenuity now, which is why we're here, and that fateful Thursday afternoon phone call that I received. On February 1st, I officially assumed the role of executive director at Ingenuity, and Courtney Cintron, who you just heard from, became our next director of partnerships and learning. Exciting. Very exciting times here. I'm really most excited for Courtney. So I'm very humbled to serve in this new role. While all of our work and any of our work will certainly evolve under new leadership, you can be sure that Ingenuity's mission will be to continue to champion arts education equity in every grade and every school at CPS, and really make sure that kids have access to arts as part of their well-rounded education. It's a mission that I feel very strongly about and have championed over my last 20 some odd years in arts education work in Chicago. Although, I certainly don't look a day over, well, I won't even put numbers out there. I certainly still look very young, but it is a mission that I will continue to champion, not only with seriousness, with the seriousness that it deserves, but also with joy. This is important work to all of us. It's important work to me personally. I'm a product, as many of you are, of an arts education. And I grew up doing this work professionally in the sector. I started as a teaching artist way back in the day. I spent a little bit of time as a high school theater teacher. I did a lot of work for many years at an arts partner organization like many of you. And then I kind of jumped the shark and went over to work for a CPS for a while and learned so much more about public education writ large. So when I came to Ingenuity over 7 years ago, it really felt like the melding of a lot of my worlds and a lot of my previous experience. I truly feel like the work that I am doing now has really been leading to this moment for me for many years. So it's exciting, it's humbling. The work ahead is great and vast, but I'm really eager to do it, not only with my team, but also with you. But enough about me. That's quite a lot about me. And we're really here to talk about you today and to focus on you and this amazing community of arts education stakeholders, and really even more explicitly, how you are part of Ingenuity's mission too. You've heard us talk, many of you have been to one of these meetings before. For those of you who it's a first, welcome. But many of you have heard us talk a lot about the way that we do our work, our data work, our learning programs, all of our advocacy work, our direct investments in CPS schools through the Creative Schools Fund, and even about our partnership with Chicago Public Schools and the Department of Arts Education. So before we zoom into all of that, I think it's important to just take a moment and ground here and take a breath together. It's been a long time since we've been in community with each other. And nonprofits, as you very well know, have really been stumbling through challenging times. It's almost cliched at this point to say it, maybe cliched to the point of meaninglessness, but I still think there's meaning and importance in saying it, that we are reckoning with longstanding racial and economic inequities, environmental disasters, political polarization, of course, a worldwide pandemic, and now this week, a war that will have major global consequences. These are seismic shifts in the global landscape and have been profoundly experienced by all of us and all of you in the nonprofit arts education sector. I see the direct impact that it's had on you and your teams and your organizations, on your school programs and your public programs. I see how the changes imparted upon Chicago's teaching artists mirrored those of our city's essential workers. And I see that fatigue has grown and capacity has dwindled. And perhaps the most kind of cutting to me is that I have seen so many colleagues and friends leave the nonprofit arts education sector altogether. They're just gone. It has not been easy for any of us. Teachers and schools wanted your arts education programming, but we're really busy trying to navigate remote learning and the safety of themselves and their families, and managing a very tense return to classrooms. You wanted your programs in schools and you wanted to have students in your spaces, but navigating those systems and the processes, vaccination, testing, and virtual program adaptation was not easy, it wasn't clear, and it wasn't cheap. So there have been lots of local and national investments and resources that were redirected, but there was a growing feeling that everyone was kind of out there on their own to figure things out. All of this has provoked a very deep sense of organizational humility for Ingenuity. We've listened and we've reflected. Like you, we have tried to serve our mission and further arts education equity in the best ways we knew how, by promoting the value of artlook, by analyzing data and mapping, by really providing programs that were aimed at being responsive to your needs. Our mission at Ingenuity calls us to focus our attention and our efforts and our resources directly on CPS students and schools. However, the last 2 years have crystallized our understanding that any effort to achieve arts education equity in CPS, even when guided by data and evidence, will be challenging without the full community's experience, knowledge, relationship skills, and participation. Uneven improvements in arts education equity outcomes, never before seen decreases in arts education partnerships, leadership transitions at all levels of the sector, ingenuity included, and a slowdown of collaborative momentum really hindered by our inability to be in physical community with each other. All of these signal that now is the right time for a collective refresh and relaunch. To that end, Ingenuity's mission really must be considered in a larger context. It's clear that it's time to reassess how Ingenuity and how the Chicago arts education sector writ large best carry our work forward. We need to build some consensus around a renewal of our collective work and engage in a creative process to get back on the same page about how we're going to do that work together to truly have the kind of impact on arts education in this city. The need for our sector to think creatively and be open to the possibilities of a renewed vision for arts education equity is as important now as it was at the start of the pandemic and as it was 11 years ago when Ingenuity was founded. We know that the best way to do that is to listen, to acknowledge, and to demonstrate, not just to tell you how things will be different. So we're going to be patient and deliberate in building and rebuilding relationships, co-creating a new vision and structure for improving arts education and aligning on our strategies and tactics, and resolving any conflicts and differences along the way to really engage in more collaborative decision-making. At the same time, we're going to pursue actions that will build momentum that improves arts education equity for CPS and students and the health and vibrancy of you, our arts partner community. This will require all of us to hold a bit of what I call patient urgency for our progress, to champion our work with gusto and to seize opportunities, but also to create space for intentional and collaborative relationship building and decision making. Those things take time. Ingenuity is striving to do more than just passively provide data and resources and programs to you. We're challenging ourselves to fundamentally change the way that we do our work alongside you. We're actively working to mitigate power differentials and to leave our egos at the door and to join forces with others to really broaden and deepen our impact. So today, you're going to hear about several ways that Ingenuity is preparing to adapt and to organize and to collaborate to co-create that new vision and structure for improving arts education access and equity, and for supporting that broad constellation of arts education partners doing this work. You'll hear about our motivations behind our data work. Why do we do this data work? And how we think about data as being integral to driving change on the ground, particularly at the school level. But we're also welcoming you to help us think about how we might evolve our data work to better serve and better and more explicitly include the work of arts partners. You'll also hear about the hard numbers on the impact of the last 2 years of partnerships in CPS schools, and how we'd like to partner with you on building better systems and access points to make it easier for you to actually deliver those programs and services in schools that are so important and so vital now more than ever. We'll also be rolling out some really exciting features that should help that on Artlook, with the sole purpose of building partnerships back, really kind of cutting out the clutter and really making those connections immediate, clear, and actionable. And What kind of arts partner, all partner ingenuity meeting would it be if we didn't talk a little bit about the state of the arts in Chicago Public Schools and what we've learned in this last year, and also to provide you with some updates on the Creative Schools Fund. And I'm very, very excited that we are able to also hear today from new CPS CEO Pedro Martinez a little bit later this morning about his thinking on arts education and how we all play into helping advance the mission of equity and engagement within arts and CPS. So there it is. That's my first address in the books as the newest executive director of Ingenuity. I hope to be able to do this again next year. Hope it's not the last. But before I hand over the mic and really kick us off to the content of the day, I would be remiss if I didn't take a few moments to really uplift the Ingenuity staff that I have the privilege and pleasure of working with every single day. Those faces that you saw on the screen just a few minutes ago, you're going to get to meet many of them today, not all of them, but many of them. I would encourage you to also reach out and say hello. We are trying to be and would like to be as accessible as possible to you. So literally just drop a line. But this team is one I'm really proud of. I feel lucky. They are wicked smart people and they're wicked good people. They really are thinking through not just the work that we do every day, but really how that work impacts this kind of global system of change that we're trying to all work towards. Each one of them in their own unique way has contributed to creating this day. And so I want to give them all a special shout out, but I want to give particular special shout out to Courtney Centron, our new Director of Partnerships and Learning, who really just did the lion's share of this work and has taken on the new role with such excitement and vigor and has really just done a great job today. So thank you, Courtney. Thank you, team. You're all amazing. Whoop, whoop. And I didn't do any singing, which I sometimes do on these events. So I spared you from that for right now. But we're going to have a great morning together. Please know, I want to hear from you. I'm going to be reaching out. We're all going to be doing that to advance this work together. So without further ado, I'm really, really thrilled now to introduce our Director of Data and Research, Steve Schufelt, who I think is really brilliant. But besides his brilliance, I just think Steve is a great human. I really, really appreciate you, Steve, and all of your brains and thinking. So, hi, Steve, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicole. Appreciate you too, and all your brilliance and brains and thinking, and so glad to have you at the helm of Ingenuity, and glad for you as well. I want to also thank all of the folks who are joining us on the line today. I'm grateful to be able to be with you today in support of our shared CPS arts education goals. And I really hope that what we talk about today will help align and re-energize us all. So I'm the Director of Data and Research. I'm here to talk about data. You've heard us talk a lot about data. You've heard Nicole talk about how data is the driver of our strategy for supporting schools and the universe of partners that work with those schools. You've heard me talk about data. You've heard other folks. Paul used to talk about data. I was going to show a picture of Jan Brady saying Marsha, Marsha, Marsha here, but decided not that wouldn't really work in the Zoom world. But I want to talk a little bit about what do we actually mean when we talk about data at Ingenuity. Why do we talk about it? What do we mean when we talk about data? And to do that, I'm going to walk through with you the big picture of how Ingenuity thinks about and uses data to further our shared goals of bringing quality arts education opportunities to every child in every grade in every school in CPS. To do that, I want to start by talking about artlook. You may not really know it, but just about every piece of data we work with comes directly from artlook. So when we talk about data, most of the time we're effectively talking about artlook data. In particular, I want to focus on the two main motivations behind our artlook work: driving change on the ground and driving systems level change. I'm going to provide a couple of brief illustrations of each of these things, and later my colleagues Angela and Patrick are going to share some exciting new work and findings to highlight where we're headed from here. So I mentioned two main motivations behind our work with the data we collect and manage through artlook: driving change on the ground and driving systemic change. What does this mean? When we talk about using artlook data to drive change on the ground, we're primarily referencing our efforts to get more arts to more students by promoting connections between schools and partners. This means we're primarily talking about the public-facing part of artlook, which, as you all know, is designed to make the data we have widely available to the public. Artlook is a matchmaking tool to bring together arts educators in schools and arts organizations to more effectively and efficiently increase arts education opportunities for students. It includes a multitude of search features and filters, not the least of which is a filter allowing users, and in particular arts partner users, to search for schools based on the interests that those schools have identified as being current priorities for their students. Artlook also includes a parallel feature allowing users, in particular school users, to search for partners based on the programs that those partners offer and the arts disciplines that are the focus of those programs. The idea of driving change on the ground goes beyond this matchmaking function. The platform promotes access to the arts by providing information on arts courses and instructors, which can also be important information for parents and families deciding which schools they want their students to attend. All of this is based on live data. When a school or partner updates its information, those updates are reflected in real time on the public-facing artlook map. Now, these are just a couple of quick examples of what we mean when we talk about artlook helping to drive change on the ground. I'd urge you to take the platform for a drive when you have a minute and are looking to be strategic about how your programs can help fill gaps in arts education in the schools. Or give us a call. We're happy to talk to you about the platform and about the data, to answer any questions, or even just give you a tour for how to use it. So speaking of being strategic about looking to fill gaps in arts access, the data we collect with artlook is the centerpiece of our strategy aimed at driving systemic change in pursuit of the every child, every grade, every school mission. In other words, we use the data in artlook every single day to help promote strategic solutions and to impact and advocate for change. You've seen our State of the Arts reports, and hopefully are now familiar with our new series of data products, the data snapshots. Angela will talk more about these in a bit. These are examples of how we analyze and share data to drive systemic change. Beyond this, though, I want to offer one additional illustration of how we use artlook data to drive systemic change. This one comes from our collaboration with the CPS, Department of Arts Education. This year, for the first time, we released to every school in CPS what is called a Creative Schools Certification Roadmap. The roadmap outlines how each school performed on each element of the Creative Schools certification, and just as importantly, provides each school with access to customized supports created in a partnership between DAE and Ingenuity to advance schools in the areas in which they are underperforming. In other words, the roadmaps, based entirely on artlook data, are helping Ingenuity and the Department of Arts Ed provide targeted support for schools to advance arts education. This is just one illustration of how we're using artlook data to drive systemic change. By increasing the health of the arts in CPS schools, we increase the importance of these schools place on the incredible programs our partner community has to offer, and thus improve the health and quality of the entire arts education ecosystem. As you look to the future, try to envision what it might be like if we were to able to create something similar to the Creative Schools certification roadmaps, but for the partner community. As we think about what we're already doing with the schools, you can begin to imagine how we might evolve our work with data about the partner community in the future. Again, with the aim of identifying gaps and opportunities and designing strategies to advance the entire arts education ecosystem. We look forward to engaging with you in the partner community so that your voices and experiences can shape where we go with that kind of thinking, or to hear other ideas from you for how we can best leverage the wealth of information we have to enhance and amplify the work that you do. So, driving change on the ground and driving systemic change, that's what we do with our artlook data. That's what we do with your artlook data. The information you provide, alongside the information provided by the schools you work with, are what makes this system go. The system works best when these two ideas are working in concert with one another. We aim to share systemic insights from our analyses of the data so that you in turn can use the data through artlook to be strategic in partnering with the schools that help close the gaps and fulfill the opportunities that are most important to the students we all seek to serve. I hope this helps to put our data focus into perspective, and I look forward to working together with you to further these goals. Thanks for taking a minute. Please do feel free to reach out with questions, ideas, suggestions. We are eager to work together with you to help make this system work the best it can for all of the folks who are part of our arts education ecosystem in CPS. And with that, I am going to turn over to Courtney to talk a little bit about the Arts Partners supporting systems change, how we're working with Arts Partners to support systems change. Courtney?
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so as Steve just discussed, the data that you share and that schools share through artlook can tell us a lot of information that we can use to make an impact and make systemic changes. And that impact also applies to arts partnerships. For over a decade, arts partnerships have been paramount to bolstering arts access and learning in schools, connecting students to broader arts communities and experiences in Chicago and beyond, and broadening cross-cultural connections and understandings. However, through recent data insights, we know that there has been a steady decrease in arts partnerships over the last few years, as Nicole mentioned earlier. More specifically, there has been a significant decrease in the count of partners that served any number of schools. So recent data insights received through artlook are indicating that the number of arts partners working in one or more CPS schools has dropped by 47% since 2018-2019. Additionally, there were 559 arts partner organizations identified in 2018-2019, 437 partners in 2019-2020, and 295 partners in the latest school year. So schools do still have partnerships, but they have far fewer of them. While more than 90% of schools had at least one arts partner in 2021, the median number of organizations working with each school has decreased from 5 to 3 since 2018-2019. And schools had an average of 3.7 fewer arts partnerships in 2020-21 than they did in 2018-2019. So as shown in the figure on the screen here, the number of schools with 6 to 10 partners has dropped pretty dramatically from 213 schools in 2018-2019 to only 71 schools in 2021. Additionally, excluding online programming, partnerships of every other type have fallen over the past 2 years. So there are many contributing factors to take into account on the reasons for the overall partner decrease. For one, we all know that the pandemic has taken a toll on the arts sector at large, And we know that many arts organizations and education programs have been experiencing a number of challenges, especially as it relates to loss of income and revenue and thus staff. But we also know that there are other factors that have contributed to the decrease in school arts partnerships. Through, once again, survey data and convenings, as well as discussions with all of you, we know that a lot of partners are also dealing with a number of challenges in partnering and working with CPS right now. So you've shared that there are a great deal of demands and that vendor protocols and policies for both in-person and remote learning with students continue to increase. You've shared that re-engaging with teachers, schools, and students after 18 months and maintaining connections hasn't been easy. You've also shared that you've experienced delays in vendor processes and communications with procurement and other CPS departments. And you've expressed concerns around financial and administrative barriers, especially due to lower staff numbers and thus decreased capacity. You've also expressed concerns about health and safety during the pandemic, especially as it pertains to those moving in and out of school buildings, such as teaching artists. None of these things have made it particularly easy for you to deliver your arts programs. And historically, Ingenuity's partnerships and learning programs have focused primarily on building partner capacity through responsive learning opportunities such as institutes and many courses with expert facilitators, workshops, panel discussions, and a number of virtual learning resources. We've also focused on connecting schools and arts organizations through our annual summits and the Arts Education Conference, as well as through the ArtLook platform. And that's still all very important. That's very important work that we're going to continue to do. But we also know that none of this matters quite as much if the barriers to delivering your programs become insurmountable. And we haven't given enough focus to ensuring that the systems and conditions that you're working within are allowing you to successfully provide your arts programming. So based on this information, we're currently reestablishing partnerships with new leadership at CPS and collaborating with you and Ingenuity's Arts Ed Leadership Advisory Committee to focus on systems level changes for arts partners. We'll be working together on some of the following initiatives. One is to first identify gaps, barriers, and inefficiencies in vendor processes. We want to streamline and optimize processes so that you aren't repeating or taking unnecessary steps. We also want to work with you on developing and advocating for solutions and updates to vendor policies and systems. So that could mean the annualization of vendor processes to create more clarity on when and how processes such as background checks, attestation, or vendor approvals are happening. We're also going to work together to create communication efficiencies so that information is flowing smoothly and efficiently in both directions. And we're going to better align resources and tailor supports to address the root cause of challenges. So the data that you provide is allowing the sector and Ingenuity to see where we can work smarter and better in our work and create shared distribution models oriented to serve an array of partner needs. Okay, so we're almost halfway through our time together this morning, and hopefully we have provided you with some helpful context about our shared work. In review, we have learned a little bit about one another in our opening. We discussed the current arts education landscape and the implications for our work together. You heard from Steve about why data, and how we can use data to drive systems change and change on the ground. And you heard from me about how we can collaborate to specifically use data to drive systems change in service of rebuilding partnerships. So now we're going to take a short break. And when we return, you'll hear from today's keynote speaker, CPS CEO Pedro Martinez. So don't go too far and we'll be right back. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to Julia de Betancourt. Executive Director of Arts Education at Chicago Public Schools, and Ingenuity's valued partner.
Thank you so much, Courtney, and good morning, all. It's wonderful to be with you today and to see the names of so many respected colleagues on the line. Please allow me a moment to share my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for your continued commitment to the students of Chicago, especially through the incredibly challenging last few years. I am so pleased to be here with you today to introduce our CEO, Pedro Martinez, who brings more than 20 years of experience in the private, nonprofit, and public education sectors to this position. Born in Aguascalientes, Mexico, Mr. Martinez came to Chicago with his family at the age of 5 in search of a better life. The eldest of 12 children, his CPS journey began as a student on Chicago's West Side, and he credits the education he received in our district schools with changing the trajectory of his life. A proud graduate of Benito Juarez in the Pilsen community, CEO Martinez was the first in his family to graduate from high school and college, and he chose to dedicate his life to education, eventually returning to our school system and serving as CPS's chief financial officer from 2003 until 2009. Prior to joining us as CEO, Mr. Martinez served as the superintendent of the San Antonio Independent School District, where he focused on academic excellence, talent recruitment, culture shift, stakeholder engagement, and strong fiscal management. 5 priorities that are closely aligned to CPS's 5-year vision, success starts here. Prior to his time in San Antonio, Mr. Martinez served as superintendent in residence for the Nevada Department of Education, where he was responsible for advising the governor's office and the state superintendent of instruction on education policy decisions. And before that, he served as superintendent in Reno, Nevada. As a data-driven leader with in-depth knowledge of academic reform strategies, he firmly believes that with the right supports, students can and will rise to any challenge, and that by setting the bar high, many more young people will be prepared for success in college, career, and civic life. I sincerely look forward to all that we can and will accomplish under CEO Martinez's leadership, working in partnership to achieve our shared goals of ensuring access to a high-quality arts education for every CPS student. I hope you will join me in warmly welcoming him back home to Chicago and to our arts education community. CEO Martinez.
Thank you, Julia. And thank you, Julia, for your leadership. Hello, everyone. I'm actually at a offsite because I was a keynote, interestingly, for a bilingual dual language conference. And I'll tell you, it's very telling that I'm doing these on the same day, because one of the things that I shared in my previous keynote is that in my former district, we had the fastest growing dual language program in the country, going from 2 schools to over 60 schools, and the total district has 100 schools. And what I was sharing was how fine arts was such a critical component as for not only the academic programs in my former district, but also the expansion of this dual language initiative. And so I'll share with you, for me, one of the things that I love about, first of all, our partnership, and thank you to all of our amazing partners. One of the things that we know is that the arts have always been an incredible mechanism, not only to engage our students and to really, really hook them to our schools, but also for their brain development, also to build their skill sets, because we know the science is very clear, is that you're working different muscles in our brains. And when we work those muscles, it shows up across the different subjects in our district. And for me, when I see the pride the students have, whether it's in visual arts or in music or other art programs, you see that pride and the confidence it builds with them. For me, again, I don't think it gets any better than that. And so just know, as even though I'm only in my 5th month in the district, one of the priorities that I do have as we look at the future is investing in the arts, ensuring that all of our schools have equitable access to these programs. And for me, I always say, you always got to lead with action, right? And many times previous results give an indicator for the future. In my former district in San Antonio, by the time I left, I was there 6.5 years. Every single school in the district had access to the arts. Visual arts starting from pre-K all the way through, starting pre-K, but every student from pre-K to 12th grade had access to the arts. Very, very rich music programs. We also had, theater. We had multiple programs. In fact, in our middle school grades, most of the schools had access to between 2 to 6 programs, depending on the size of the enrollment in that school. And they got to choose whether it was a band program. We had a steel drum program that was amazing, our mariachi programs, folklorico, theater, visual arts, all of it. And so for me, and I'll tell you, San Antonio for the last 2 years in the state assessments had the fastest growth of any district in the state of Texas, even with a 90% poverty rate. So I know that a big part of that was our investments in the arts. And so for me, I'm just anxious to partner with you and to integrate that across our schools, because we know that for many of our children, especially children living in poverty, sometimes our children struggle with confidence. One of the things that the arts does for many of our students, it gives them an avenue to express themselves, even when they're struggling in math, or myself, who was an English language learner, when they're struggling with their language or their vocabulary or their comprehension, they can express themselves through the arts. And what I love about the arts is there's so many different programs. You can always find something that's appealing to our children. And of course, the key is you got to start early. You got to start early. So that's why I'm a big, big advocate for starting art programs across our elementary schools that really builds it into our culture, so that then those programs can continue all through the middle schools and high schools. So I'm just excited that we have a strong team in CPS, that we have an amazing set of partners that are already working together to help us expand fine art programs. And, the only thing I will ask of all of you is just continue to help us, continue to work with us. I want to make sure we have a great comprehensive plan, that we do it at scale. One of the strategies that we would put in place as part of our vision is having a neighborhood plan where we assess all of the programming across each of the neighborhoods. And one of the questions that I'm asking is, what is our standard for academics? What is our standard for the arts? What should every child in CPS receive? And then once we set that standard, let's create a plan that builds over time that access, and it makes the investments so that we have that level of programming across every single neighborhood. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, but I'm going to need help. We're a large district. We have 600 schools. We're in over 77 neighborhoods, depending on how you count neighborhoods in Chicago. And so we want to make sure that as we look at neighborhoods that just don't have the same access to resources, that we make those critical investments and we have the partnerships there. And what I love is that our city is rich in the arts. And so I know that we can leverage those partnerships, but I will need that help. And then finally, I'll just end with this and then be happy to take any questions. For me, one of the things, one of my favorite stories I can share with you. So I grew up in Chicago, parents, second grade education, English language learner, went to Walsh, went to Cooper's Junior High, and then graduated from Benito Juarez. And I always struggled in the arts. I just didn't have access to the arts, especially in elementary school, especially visual arts. Visual arts always to this day still scare the heck out of me. So I have 2 children, one who's 11 and one who just turned 8. And one of the things that I love watching, they love the arts. They actually love, they love, whether it's crafts, whether it's drawing, they love the visual arts. And so it's amazing to me as I watch them and I see their creativity. I see it as a father. And for me, like I said, even as my experience as a superintendent, CEO, I've seen that in so many different classrooms with so many students, how it just opens up a whole world for them. And one of my favorite things to do is to go to our schools who have strong art programs and to actually walk into those classrooms, to meet the teachers, to see how the rooms are set up. And so it's just something that, again, that I'm very passionate about. And I am very much looking forward to working with our team, working with all of you to really find ways to, again, make this vision a reality. With that, let me stop and see if I can take any questions. But again, it's been my honor to be with you. Thank you.
Hi, CEO Martinez. Thank you so much for your comments and your remarks, and welcome to Chicago. And we're very excited to be the first to kind of introduce you to this incredible group of arts education partners who are so committed to the students within the district. We've got just like a quick question for you. You are a data-driven leader. We know that about you. We know that that is kind of a cornerstone of your work. How do you envision utilizing the kind of data that Ingenuity has collected and that these arts partners here kind of collect to really push towards that vision for equity?
Yeah, so first of all, I think for me, Nicole, starts really first with access. If there's something that I have learned doing this for 20 years, many times the challenges that our children have is they just don't have access. They don't have access to the content. They don't have access to the programs. And so the first thing we really have to address is that access issue. So for me, starting with data, where do we have our programs? Where are our strongest programs? What neighborhoods are represented? Let's build on that, right? That's an asset. So let's learn from that. How do we build a pipeline in terms of, teachers? Because as you know, behind every key program is both partners and teachers. It's just the reality. And so how do we use also that information and really build sort of, really what our assets are and inventory that, and then say, okay, now let's look at the entire city. Where do we see gaps, right? So start with that. The other thing that I can tell you, Nicole, that I have always seen, and I saw this, and everywhere I've been at, when you look at our students that are actively involved in the arts and you look at their student achievement, I'll tell you the correlation is very, very strong. And so that's another area that I think we have to leverage to explain to everybody. It's not just a program. It's not like something that's on the side. It really has to be integrated. So I'm a big fan of STEAM academies. I'm a big fan of fine art academies. And I would love to have fine art and STEAM academies, at least some representation in every single neighborhood, right? We should have that because we know the strengths and we know how strong those students do academically. And like I said, there's so much science that, I could spend all day speaking about it, right? Just so much science about how, again, when you work those different muscles in your brain, it all translates into mastering, so much of our core content. And so for me, Nicole, I want to use the data that way because we've always known that, there's a lot of advocates for the arts. I'm one of them. But at the same time, we also have to back it into how it also complements our core instruction and how it complements just better student outcomes, especially for many, we need donors, right? Because so many of our children, the other thing I would tell you, Nicole, that I also find with the arts is just key. So many of our children that want access to the arts, the programming is the beginning in our schools, but in addition to that, and this is really for our partners, it's those other things that really matter. So think about this. If you have a child who has a passion in one particular, program or one particular fine art program, whether it's, piano, or my daughter wants to learn violin, and like I said, they love drawing, they love the crafts. As parents, some parents have the means to be able to provide children access to that programming. So not only in the school, but even after school. Our children in poverty don't have that. And so one of the things that I really want also is to make sure that we complement the programs within the school day, after the school day. And when we see children that have a passion, how do we help those families get access to that extra support? Because we know that most of our middle class and upper class students, that's what they get, right? That's just part of the DNA of their family. I'd like to figure out how to also make that connection to our families with less means.
That's really, really important. And I think you are speaking to a crowd here who fully understands and agrees with that and knows the value as well. CEO Martinez, again, we are just so grateful that you could take some time away from what we know is a very busy schedule for you these days, and especially this morning as you were at the Principal Institute. And just want to offer us in service to your vision for making it happen, right? We've got such great arts partners there, and we really want to try to help assist them in providing those partnerships to schools and really trying to kind of navigate how to do that in the best way so that this incredible collection of resources can really be delivered effectively to our students so that we're all working in the same direction for equity.
Well, count on that, Nicole. Count on it as we lay out our plans. You will see the arts being very, very high on that priority list And I will count on, all of our partners to help us make that a success. And please, like I said, our children deserve it. And I know that when we excite them, especially through the arts, it shows up in every other area that we do. So again, Nicole, count on that partnership.
We sure will. And we're going to get you doing some visual art at some time, CEO Martinez. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to build your confidence in creating visual art.
I do stick figures, Nicole. That's as good as I get. I do stick figures.
Stick figures can still be very artistic.
Yep.
Thank you again so much, CEO Martinez. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. A big thank you to CEO Martinez and Nicole Upton for those valuable and crucial insights on further realizing arts education access and equity in Chicago public schools. So arts education and arts partner advocacy includes all of the systems work that we've outlined so far and that Pedro and Nicole discussed. And it also includes data solutions that will help rebuild partnerships and strengthen communications between partners and schools. So I'm going to hand it off now to my colleague, Patrick, to tell you a little bit more.
Patrick, you're muted.
Hello. Okay, sorry. I apologize for apparently I was muted. So I'm going to talk to you about some new artlook features, and you missed my joke, so I will retell the joke that I just said while I was muted, which is that I was excited to talk about the new artlook features until we did the opening poll, and only 2 out of 83 of you wanted to hear about new artlook features. So apparently I'm doing the thing that none of you guys want to hear about. I'm joking, of course. The number one thing you guys wanted to hear about was how we can support you partnering with CPS. So what if I told you that these new artlook features will help you partner better with CPS? So we're gonna talk about that. So I hope that you will be very pleasantly surprised. Like previous upgrades to artlook, feedback from partners, users, and schools has been helpful. And some of you may be familiar with previous iterations of the website, where it was basically just some extra code sitting on top of Google Maps to the current website. And the current website is a far cry from what it used to be, thanks in part to feedback from you. As cool as the map is now, and as far as it's come, we continually work to improve it. And in particular, we'd like Artlook to help you facilitate partnerships with schools more so than it does now, and more easily. So we've been listening. You shared caution or trepidation around contacting schools. We all know that teachers are busy, and as hard as the last couple of years has been on all of us, it's been uniquely challenging for teachers teaching students. You've shared a desire to let others know that your organization is interested in partnership, and you've shared confusion around trying to find good partnerships, especially outside of your network. Your feedback is helping us develop a suite of features that will work together to make collaborating and connecting with schools easier. Most of these features are still in development, but we'll unveil them in the coming weeks and months. So before I walk you through them, I'm gonna give you a disclaimer here. With the exception of the partnership interest status that we're gonna demonstrate in a minute, these other features are in development, so the screenshots and mock-ups that you see, they're not the final version, but we will be explaining how they're going to work in the future. So with that being said, let me briefly walk you through what's coming. We mentioned that there was a desire to let people know that you're looking for a partnership. So we're adding a partnership interest status icon that will let everyone know you're open for business. You're looking to connect and make partnerships. Thank you, Anita Ward, for ringing my bell. We're also adding in-app and email notifications, hence the bell icon. So you know when something important is happening. So for example, if a new contact, the contact changes at an existing partnership that you have, that might be something that you'd want to be notified of via email. And finally, Artlook will start suggesting schools for your organization to partner with based on your program's offerings and the school's interests. So let's talk about that, suggested partnerships. We're all familiar with Netflix, right? You log on and it'll tell you based on things that you've already watched. Hey, you might, you might suggest a TV show or a movie, or like dating apps, which are apparently the kids use them. Despite my hairline and baby face, I'm a lot older than I look in the dating apps, or I only hear about them. So think about like an Artlook Tinder or an Artlook Tinder Flicks or something like that. So that's what we're talking about. We ask you already for your programs, for the type of programs that you offer, whether it's a field trip or an artist in residency or professional development. And we also ask schools what they're interested in. And we ask you about the subdisciplines that are associated with those programs. And we ask schools about the subdisciplines they're interested in. So like, can't we just kind of bring those things together and make matches? And yeah, we totally can. Si se puede, we can do it. And so we're gonna do it. So this is the way it'll work. As an Artlook user, you'll sign in like you would normally sign into Artlook. There'll be a new area in the map and you'll see a screen that looks kind of like what's showing on the screen right now. And it'll suggest different schools to you based on the number of interests that match up to the programs that you like. As I mentioned, the suggested matches will be generated based on the information in your organization's profile. So the more up-to-date your program information is, the better Artlook will be able to suggest good matches for you. And Courtney's going to talk about our efforts to help you guys do that in a little bit later. Now, technically, you can do this right now on the map. You can go to Artlook, you can go to the map, you can use the filters and click different things, and it'll find schools for you that have those different interests that your programs offer. But you have to do that currently. And if you've got 10 programs, they might be very different. So, you'd have to do that like 10 different times. So this new feature will get you there quicker. It'll do it for you and it will do it constantly. And this hasn't been released yet. It's still in development, but we think we'll be launching it in a couple of 2-3 months, something like that. The next feature or the next features are the notifications. So all of the stuff I just mentioned about the cool matching and suggesting partnerships isn't much help to you unless you are constantly on Artlook. And that's not what the website is. That's not how you use it. It's not designed that way. So notifications will help keep you up to date on that in the coming months or possibly even weeks. You'll be able to opt into email notifications from Artlook. So they'll notify you of sort of the new suggested matching events once that's live, or like I mentioned, like a new contact changes or something like that. The notification settings will be specific to a user. So you could have 2 people at the same organization and one opts into the notifications and one opts out, and that's totally fine. You can have them on a weekly basis, a daily basis, no problem. There will also be notifications in the application. You'll see a notification icon that looks like the bell icon in the upper right, like you see here. And that bell will expand to show you different notifications when you click on it. And debuting. Oh, hey. I hope that you guys are enjoying this, because we can't see your reactions, and so we're having a good time over here. But I hope you're enjoying the musical stylings of Anita Ward. That's an 8-minute song, by the way, just so that you know. And they don't make them like that anymore, but it's a great tune. So let me talk to you about the last feature that's live right now. We're debuting it today. It went live last night, and we're gonna show you a little video about how it works. But before we show you the video, I just want to give a big shout out to Kate Walsh of the Old Town School of Folk Music, who was gracious enough to let us use her profile for this demonstration video. Kate also serves on Ingenuity's advisory panel, ALEC. And so thank you, Kate. And we're going to show the demonstration right now. So this is the Artlook website, the map. You would log in, you can log in like you normally would. So you go up to the partners section, and you would go to the school partnerships area on the bottom there. And then at the top, you'll see that new question. Are you currently looking for a partnership? That wasn't there yesterday. So click yes if you want people to be able to find you. And then here, I'm just demonstrating, if you go back to the map and search for yourself. So that was the Old Town School of Folk Music. And if you use the filter that's looking for a partnership, boom, you'll see Old Town School of Folk Music. Because right now, or at least at that time last night, they were the only partner that had that clicked, because I clicked it for them. So again, thank you, Kate. That's a function that'll be available for schools too, right? So maybe not often you guys are looking for other partners, but you're looking for schools, obviously. But schools will have the same functionality to be able to say that, yes, we're looking for a partnership. So you'll be able to search for schools that way on your own if you want. That'll have bigger implications later on when we release the other features, right? So immediately, this isn't that big of a deal. It's one more thing. You can click it, people can search for you, but it'll be incorporated into the suggested matches feature. So it's important in the next few months that you update your profile. Specifically, you're currently looking for a partnership status if you're looking for partnerships, so that when we release these other features, you're getting the most out of it. We're so eager for you guys to use these new features. We're so excited for it. I really hope that it works the way that we're intending it to work. And we hope it makes your lives a little bit easier in creating beneficial partnerships. And we think that the easier to make those connections with schools, the more you're going to keep your data up to date, right? It's a sort of a virtuous cycle. The data makes it easier to make the connections feed that incentive. And so the more your data is up to date, the more complete it is, the more useful it is. And in aggregate, it can and has been used for policy decisions at the school, district, and city level. And that's what Artlook and Ingenuity is all about, right? And that's why we're all here today. So while data is giving us new ways to make improvements and how we are supporting partners and connecting with schools and providing their programs to students, it's also fueling our ability to make sector-wide changes. So I'm going to pass things off to my colleague, Angela Lynn, and she's going to talk to you about how we're using some of that data.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Patrick. I'm Angela, and I'm the Senior Data Analyst at Ingenuity, and I will be talking now about the SODA and Data Snapshots, which are two analytical products that Ingenuity publishes. I will start with the State of the Arts report. The State of the Arts report presents data that tracks student access to arts education in CPS, while also identifying areas for improvement and opportunities for growth. We are now in the process of putting together the 9th one for the 2020 to 21 school year, and wanted to share some of our key findings with you. This report has always been used to elevate trends that we are seeing across the district and emphasize how integral a quality arts education is for all of our students. Courtney has shared some of the data we have on the arts partner community. And so this slide is focused more on key findings on our school data. For our key findings, we saw that schools largely continued to provide access to courses, though small drops were recorded. This is in relation to what we call our access elements. And these include staffing, minutes of instruction, share of students that took at least one arts course, and breadth and depth of disciplines offered at high schools. As for our quality section, we did see more drops in some of these metrics. These elements are more resource neutral. For example, they include the use of arts learning standards and whether administrators or arts instructors participated in professional development. Family and community engagement levels dropped to an all-time low in the 2020 to 21 school year, with only 67% of schools reporting some form of engagement. While this isn't surprising, since Ingenuity has been collecting this information from the 2012 to 2013 school year in comparison, historically over 90% of schools had reported engagement for every year. The State of the Arts report will be published in upcoming months and will include the key findings listed here, as well as the ones that Courtney was sharing earlier. Another way that we are driving our mission is through a new Ingenuity data product called Data Snapshots. They are intended to complement the State of the Arts report and will be published more frequently throughout the year. Data snapshots are an expanded analysis that will take a closer look at information collected from Artlook and other sources and will focus on a single topic. Our goal is to present actionable insights and share back the data to the community to drive change on the ground. The first data snapshot was published last week and is available on Ingenuity's website now. We are truly excited about this publication. It is titled Arts Education Access and CPS, How School Size, Type, and Student Demographics Impact the 2019 to 2020 Creative School Certification. As the name suggests, the snapshot examines the relationship between race and ethnicity, school enrollment, school type, and a school certification score. There's also a 2-pager summary available online. Here is a key element from the snapshot report. A similar chart is also available online in our published report and looks at what percentage of students disaggregated by race and ethnicity attended schools with arts partnership. I will now spend some time to orient us to this chart. Each row is for a school type. Here we are looking at the top row for district managed schools and the bottom row for non-district managed schools, which are largely our charter schools. Each row has our data disaggregated by racial and ethnic demographic groups. The percentages show what proportion of students in a given school type in the row and a demographic group went to a school that had arts partnerships. The numbers on top of each bar represent the number of students. So for example, for the grand total on the top left, we see that 98% of 290,553 students that attended district managed schools went to a school that had arts partnerships. Based on this chart and comparing the distributions, there are 2 key findings. 1, Black students are more likely than students in any other demographic group to attend a school that did not report a partnership with an outside arts organization. This is seen for both school types we show in the rows here. For both district managed schools and non-district managed schools, we see that the percentage in red is higher for Black students as compared to students of any other demographic group. And in particular, when we're looking at that bottom row, we do see that 26% of Black students attending non-district managed schools went to a school that did not have an arts partnership. Another key finding comes across when we're comparing the grand total bars on the left of each row. So comparing the grand total bar on the top and the bottom, another key finding is that students at non-district managed schools are significantly less likely than students at district managed schools to have access to partnerships. And we see that 2% of district managed students went to school without an arts partnership, as opposed to 17% of non-district managed students. From this, it's clear that there are gaps in access and there are inequities from what we see in our data. And we hope that this can inform which schools partnerships may be solicited with or inform any outreach you do. Perhaps that is seen in outreach towards non-district managed schools or schools that serve predominantly Black students. There are clear trends that we are seeing with which students have more access to partnerships. And in working together with you, we want to help close this gap. With what Steve was saying earlier, this is really a way we hope to present data to drive change on the ground. Now, for our next data snapshot, we would like to highlight partner data that we have from you that you've put it on Artlook. We would love to hear your ideas and feedback on which analyses would be most of interest. Nicole will be opening a poll shortly, and then I will also walk through the answer options. And so question 1 lists out some options we've come up with, but we would love also if in number 2, you wanted to input any other topics or questions that you have. And so walking through at least what's listed on number 1, Student access to different partnership types can include student access by school demographics to, for example, resources, residencies, or online programming. Analysis of program outcomes. These are qualities and intended outcomes that are listed on your profile for each program that you offer. These include having an anti-racist, anti-bias focus, a culturally responsive approach, or a social and emotional learning focus. For these next two bullet points, these are relatively newer data points we have been collecting from your profiles on whether your organization has BIPOC-led characteristics. So for this first one of the two, for organizational leadership, this can be in the form of founders, leaders, or the board. For student-facing personnel, this is also a new data point we have started collecting in 2020 to 2021 on whether your teaching artists and or staff that directly deliver programs to students are a majority BIPOC. As for financial assistance for programs, these include financial supports that you're able to provide for your programs. Different response options have included discounted buses, discounted tickets, and teacher stipends. As for teaching artists, we have yet to do an in-depth analysis on our teaching artist community. And if you have any other ideas or wonderings, there's space for you to write them in as question number 2. And you can still select some of these previous options in one and also choose to write something in. Courtney or Nicole, would you be able to give me an update on how many individuals have responded to the poll and how long we should keep it open?
Sure, we've got just about half of people responding so far, so we could keep it open maybe just a few more moments.
Thank you, Nicole.
Mhm. All right, Angela, we're just about over 60% here. Would you like me to close out?
That sounds good. And if you do have any other comments, please feel free to email me at Ingenuity or send us a message in the Zoom chat. We will be sure to write in all the feedback. All right, so taking a look at this, there's a fairly high response rates or I shouldn't say response rates, they're fairly high selective proportionally for each of the responses. So I think the highest technically would be for teaching artists at 48%. And coming very close, we have two other selections at 47%. So student access to different partnership types, as well as financial assistance for programs. So everything besides the write-ins are all above 37%. So I think this is really exciting for something we can work on, since it seems like y'all are interested in all of the topics we've so far come up with, though we will also be sure to read in what people wrote in for number 2. So thank you for your responses. In order to provide the most accurate analyses and insights, we hope that you can take the time to update your artlook profiles for artlook Converge, which Courtney will share more details on later. This is so that we run our analyses, not just for this upcoming data snapshot, but anytime we pull our data, the data can be the most complete picture of our arts partner community. And as Patrick has talked about, there's so many exciting features that are being rolled out. And we are really looking forward to working together with you to provide data that can be most useful to you and also serve our students. As we look forward to learning more about the scope of arts partners in the district, we also celebrate your impact on Chicago schools. For this next section, I'll pass it off to Ola for a deeper dive into how the Creative Schools Fund is a catalyst for change and how your partnerships are leading the way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angela, for that introduction. And hello, good morning. It is so good to be with you all. I know I've talked to some of you email-wise or virtually before, and some of you I have not. So for those of you I'm new to, my name is Ola Faleti, and I manage the Creative Schools Fund with Eli Cole, who is its director. And I know that many of you are familiar with the fund as far as what it does. The Creative Schools Fund supports teacher-designed and led high-quality arts programs that take place in schools. These are largely programs that happen in the form of partnerships, which many of you have been supported by. And these are also programs that are awarded at the $10,000 level. So there's some facts that we have to consider. Annually, we award about $1.5 million to CPS schools, much of which siphons to partners. But this is a multi-billion-dollar budget. So it very much seems, at least on the surface, like a tiny drop in a very large bucket. So the question that we ask ourselves is, how much can we move the needle with these grants that seem quite small in the grand scheme of things? And what we hypothesize, and what we're going to discuss a bit more in these next few slides, is that support from the Creative Schools Fund in the form of grants is actually deepening the impact of other arts education supports in schools. These are supports that indicate that a school has an arts positive ecosystem. And we're finding that your partnerships are really leading the way in this impact. So as much as we've been talking this morning about the challenges that this sector has faced and how difficult it's been over these past few years and continues to be, I think it's also important to have space to celebrate wins because they're continuing to happen. And these are continuing to be really impactful partnerships for our teachers and for our schools. So I'm looking forward to talking a bit more about that in the following slides. So if we think about the profile of a school that is excelling in the arts, when we pull them up on Artlook, for example, we often think about art staffing as a #1 or main indicator of whether or not a school has high quality access and programming, whether there's actual dedicated art staffing at that school. And of course, that matters. But as we zoom in to the profile of an arts excelling school, we're also seeing that these are schools that have external partnerships with arts organizations. And to take things a step further, these are often arts organizations that are engaged with values of quality, methods and means for really creating pedagogy that is culturally responsive and also engaging and fun for our students. These are also arts partners that are tapped into the greater landscape as far as just what's happening in the sector, what are needs that are coming up, ways that we're needing to evolve, especially during this pandemic, by being aware of or tuning into things such as the Arts Ed Response Collective's final report, for example. So all of this to say that partnerships are a key indicator of excelling in the arts for a school. If you don't mind going back to the previous slide for a moment, Tosh. Thank you. And to highlight that point, or to narrow in on that point, when we think about the fund's investment since 2012, it's been $16 million in public and private funding. This is a joint funding effort between us and the city and CPS as well. Of that, 9.4 million has been going towards actual competitive grants, which most of you or many of you know the Creative Schools Fund for. And then to take that a step further, of that amount, we have about 8.4 million that's gone directly into the pockets of arts partners that are providing residencies and that are providing professional learning for teachers at these schools at a rate of on average of 50 partnerships annually. So this is what we are continuing to invest in as we see the importance of arts partners for creating arts positivity at a school level. Okay, Tosh, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay. So to zoom in a bit further, having established what we know as far as partnerships being really key, I want to take some time to talk a bit more about what we're seeing as far as the positives and as far as impacts from these CSF partnerships with you all, with arts organizations. What we're finding, and this is data that we've culled from grant reports, this is data that we've gotten qualitatively directly from school recipients, is that partnerships are really playing a role when it comes to student gains, teacher gains, and also gains that are happening in general across the school. At a student level, we're seeing a lot of growth with social emotional learning, how students relate to other students, how they're aware of what they're feeling. That's something that's especially become, it's always been important, but especially now, especially during this pandemic, that has really widened gaps as far as students that may already be experiencing forms of trauma or difficulty just based off of the circumstances that they're in. So really seeing how teachers are saying with these partnerships, students are able to relate to themselves better. They're able to use the arts as a tool for personal development and personal reflection, and really just seeing that as a positive. I would say in a similar vein, we're also seeing that with identity exploration. These arts partnerships are a rich time for students to dive into aspects of their culture, aspects of where they are from, whether that's on a more local level or whether that's more ancestral as far as being children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. So when we find that so many of our partners are bringing really culturally responsive curriculum, adapting it to meet the demographics and the interests of these students, it's having a really major impact. When we think about teachers and the teacher capacity that arts partners bring, so many of these educators at schools are the only ones. They have no other arts educators or sometimes even artists. So when these partners come into schools, you're essentially creating a small community of practice. Now these arts teachers have a space to bounce ideas off of, to gain new insights, or to simply have extra capacity as far as providing more individualized attention to students. In a similar vein, we're also seeing that arts partners are bringing new disciplines to schools. They're bringing deeper disciplines to schools. A school that may already have a band or an orchestra program is able to really elevate and provide deeper opportunities for students that are already doing well to kind of advance and learn with bringing in arts partners to do that work. So all of these things as a whole, when we look at them holistically, contribute towards ultimately achieving a more sustainable arts ecosystem. What we're finding is that a lot of our schools that have been grantees continue to find ways to make partnerships happen, even if they don't receive a Creative Schools Fund grant for the following year. They realize with the student buy-in that's taking place, with the student engagement that's happening, there are students from other grades who are seeing the impact of these partnerships, and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of this too. We've had grantees come back and apply for a grant that would serve a wider section of students because they realize that that interest is there. This is something that administrators and principals notice when seeing the boost in morale, the boost in eagerness to learn and just to be at school. That really says something. That says that the arts are worth prioritizing, the arts are worth centering, and that's something that would be much harder to get across without your partnerships and without you being in these schools. So all of this is to say that arts partnerships and your work is really the central lever of change for the Creative Schools Fund. And while at this time, we're very much still in the process of figuring out and finalizing what the fund will look like next year, I can absolutely guarantee that we will continue to highlight partnerships and prioritize partnerships, knowing how essential this work is. So if you don't hear it enough, thank you. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your drive and what's been an exceptionally difficult past 2 years. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. And at this point, I am going to turn things over to Courtney to talk a bit more about some exciting news to share.
Thank you, Ola. I am back. Did you miss me? So now you've heard our teams talk about what we're doing with data and programs that has the potential to impact you and the arts education sector at large. But none of this will work in the ways that we've discussed today without you. There's currently a gap in the level of information that's been shared by arts partner organizations on the Artlook platform. And you know, that's probably because we haven't done a good enough job of making it work in the ways that you need it to. But as we've talked about today, we're changing that. So over the next month, through our Artlook Converge campaign, we're going to double down on supporting arts partners to update and complete all of the fields in their Artlook profiles. So get ready to dust off those sign-in credentials and let's start maximizing and making moves on Artlook together. We will be reaching out to ensure that you have what you need to get started. So we also have some funds that we would like to use to prioritize BIPOC-led organizations and small organizations in updating those profiles. And we'll be sending you more information about that shortly. And to ensure that everyone knows how to update and understands the basics of how to use the Artlook platform, we're also going to be providing some Artlook 101 workshops and dedicated office hours sessions. So be on the lookout for those. We'll be following up with some communications very shortly. So by the end of March, when we end the campaign, we're hoping to see some collective momentum on the platform so that we can work together to rebuild partnerships, to make sure that we have the information that will provide us with insights and how we can improve partnering with CPS so that we can maximize new feature development on Artlook in support of partnerships and have a more complete picture of what arts education equity and access looks like across the sector. So this does also involve an ongoing commitment on both of our ends. It's not just a one-time update or a one-time workshop or campaign or office hours. So let's converge and make some healthy habits together. We're also working towards enhancing educator use of the platform. So Artlook is a communication tool. It's not one-sided. So we're also working on strategies to help schools maximize the platform and all of the new partnership features that we'll be launching really, really soon. So we have a lot to look forward to over the next few months, and we're hoping that we can take this journey together. So I'm going to pass the mic one last time to Nicole Upton for some closing thoughts, but I too, really quickly, would like to say thank you and extend some deep gratitude and appreciation to each of you for joining us today and for all that you do. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Courtney. And that is our 2022 all partner meeting in the books right there. These are always epic marathons to get through all of the content that we have and to share not just everything that we're doing again, but the way that we want to welcome partnership with you to accomplish these goals, to make sure that the ecosystem around schools is strong, is vibrant, is working in a way that is accessible, and that really collectively builds towards that vision of arts education equity in Chicago Public Schools. I am so thrilled to be able to do this work. I am so humbled, and I am so ready to learn with you how to do this work and how to really partner in the best ways possible. Please don't be strangers. I'm coming for all of you. We're going to have some conversations. We're going to rebuild, and we're going to do this together. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Friday. I am extending to you a virtual cookie and cup of lemonade. If we were together in the same place, we'd be doing that. So please have a great rest of your day and weekend, and know we are just a phone call or an email away. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.